Welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right into a scenario that I'm pretty sure we can all relate to. Imagine waking up one morning, grabbing your wallet, and realizing that the exact same 100 rupees you had yesterday suddenly buys you, well, less. You go to the store, pick up your usual stuff, and all of a sudden, you're coming up short on cash.
It immediately begs a really crucial question, right? Who is stealing your money? I mean, think about it. Nobody actually broke into your house and stole your cash. Your salary didn't change at all from last month. And if you log into your banking app right now, it's going to show the exact same balance. Yet somehow, even with all those numbers staying exactly the same, you are quite literally poorer.
Well, that's because this invisible thief actually has a name, and it's inflation. It is this invisible force that just quietly steals your purchasing power, literally reducing the actual amount of goods your money can buy. And somewhere in Washington, a group of people at the U.S. Federal Reserve are actively trying to stop it. So this is the story of inflation, interest rates, and why one single decision by the Federal Reserve can move stock markets around the entire world in a matter of minutes.
Chapter 1. The Town of Prosperity, when everything is in balance. To really grasp how this all works, let's just imagine a beautiful, perfectly balanced place called the Town of Prosperity. People have great jobs, families are buying homes, and there are enough products for everyone. But let's see what happens when that balance gets totally disrupted. Say, one year, people start earning more money. Banks are throwing out easy loans and everyone is buying more stuff. But the factories, they just can't produce products fast enough. And this brilliantly illustrates the core issue here. Think about this scenario. There are still only 100 bicycles available in the whole town. But because of all that new money and easy borrowing, 300 people now want to buy one. So what happens? The bicycle seller raises prices. Not because the bikes magically got faster or better, but simply because the demand became way higher than the supply. And unfortunately, that supply and demand imbalance spreads way beyond just bicycles. When demand exceeds supply across an entire economy, food becomes expensive, fuel becomes expensive, rent becomes expensive, travel becomes expensive. Basically, almost everything costs more. That is exactly what inflation is. It's just too much money chasing too few goods. Chapter 2. Families feel the pain. The reality of everyday inflation. Okay, so now that we understand the big picture, let's bring it down to the individual level. Meet Sarah. Sarah earns the exact same salary today as she did last year, but she's noticing that grocery prices just keep creeping up. Milk costs more, eggs cost more, her electricity bill is up, and yep, her rent just increased again. Every single month, she's noticing something really strange happening. She has the exact same paycheck, but she's walking out of the store with smaller groceries. She realizes she isn't actually earning less money. Her money simply buys less. Inflation is just quietly stealing her purchasing power. Chapter 3. Enter the Federal Reserve. The fight to control prices.
So how in the world do we stop this invisible thief? Let's zoom out from Sarah's local grocery store and head all the way over to Washington. That is where the Federal Reserve sits. Now, their singular job is super simple to explain, but incredibly difficult to execute. Keep inflation under control. You see, the Fed can't just magically print more food or build thousands of houses overnight to fix the supply problem. They can't do that. Instead, they use their absolute most powerful tool, changing interest rates. And notice how drastically things change when the Fed steps in. Just imagine you're borrowing money. Yesterday, the bank charged you 3% interest. Today, because the Fed took action, they're charging 6%. Suddenly, borrowing money is way more expensive.
Let's actually walk through this brilliant little chain reaction step by step. Step 1. The Fed raises those interest rates. Step 2. Borrowing money becomes expensive. Buying a new house, getting a car loan, securing a business loan, it all just costs more. Even your credit card interest goes up. And because of this, we hit Step 3. People naturally borrow less, businesses invest a lot more carefully, and consumers just spend less overall. Demand finally begins slowing down. Which brings us to Step 4. When fewer people are out there chasing those exact same products, prices eventually stop rising so quickly. And that right there is exactly how higher interest rates knock over the dominoes to help fight inflation.
Chapter 4. How the market reacts. When Washington speaks, the world listens.
Now, because the Federal Reserve's decisions are so incredibly powerful, they definitely don't happen in a vacuum. I mean, imagine millions of investors obsessively watching one single building. Every speech, every meeting, every single sentence out of the Federal Reserve can literally move billions of dollars. If one afternoon the Fed announces, hey, we're keeping interest rates unchanged, within minutes we see these massive, rapid reactions. Some investors celebrate because they're hoping for growth. Others start worrying about inflation sticking around.
Stock prices might jump, then quickly fall, then rise all over again. Markets react this wildly because every single company out there depends on borrowing costs. Lower rates usually encourage growth, while higher rates usually slow the economy down. Every single decision changes the world's expectations. And really, it all comes back to this one crucial number, 2%. Let's say a few months pass. People are hoping inflation is finally, disappearing. But then, new economic data drops, and it turns out inflation has actually accelerated again. Prices are rising faster than anyone expected, and core inflation remains stubbornly above the Federal Reserve's goal of 2%. So the crucial thing to understand here is that when inflation stays above that 2% target, the market absolutely starts to panic. Investors immediately start firing off these really difficult, rapid-fire questions. Will the Fed keep rates high? Is borrowing going to stay expensive for the foreseeable future? Are companies going to earn way less profit because of all these high costs? And the scary part is, no one knows the answers immediately. And that unknown creates a ton of fear and widespread market volatility. Chapter 5. The Bigger Lesson. Navigating the Economic Cycles.
All right, so how do we actually survive this roller coaster of rising prices and market panic? Well, meet David. David is a smart, everyday investor who just puts a little money away every single month. He understands one very important lesson. Markets are going to move every single day, but truly great businesses are built over decades. He remembers that patience often outlasts panic. So when the news is creating all this fear, David doesn't freak out. Instead, he studies, he learns, and he just keeps investing right according to his long-term plan.
See, David doesn't panic because he fundamentally understands this timeline. When you look at the scale of decades, economic cycles always change. Point 1, inflation rises. Point 2, the Fed reacts and interest rates increase. Point 3, because of those high rates, demand slows down and inflation falls. Point 4, to stimulate the economy all over again, interest rates decrease. It is a cycle. And by understanding this recurring pattern, we could make far smarter financial decisions without getting swept up in all that daily anxiety.
But look, let's be totally clear about the real-world impact here. Inflation isn't just some dry economic number that gets debated by politicians in Washington. It is a very real force that directly impacts literally every single aspect of a family's financial life. Every grocery bill, every paycheck, every mortgage, every investment, and every business. One single decision by the Federal Reserve ripples out to influence financial markets and kitchen tables across the entire globe.
So the next time you see a news headline saying inflation increased or the Federal Reserve held interest rates steady, I want you to remember that those aren't just headlines. They are real stories about families, businesses, and economies just trying to find some balance. Because money isn't just about how much you earn, it is entirely about what your money can actually buy. And in this ongoing battle between inflation and purchasing power, always remember this. Inflation silently reduces purchasing power, but financial knowledge helps protect it. Understanding inflation doesn't magically make high prices disappear, for sure, but that knowledge becomes one of the absolute greatest assets you have to protect your wealth.
Which leaves us with one final, incredibly important question for you to consider as we wrap up this explainer. The more you understand the economy, the better decisions you can make for your own future. So, how will you invest in your financial knowledge today? Take a moment to really think about that and keep learning. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the invisible thief.